Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kayla Kempers. I am a writer and creative. I currently have one poetry collection out that you can purchase if you would like, and I'm in the middle of editing my high fantasy pirate adventure novel currently titled Between the Waves, and I'm also at the beginning of drafting a high fantasy dragon standalone, which currently is just called Project Geo because I don't have a name for it yet. I had a goal this week to finish the first pass of draft 3 of Between the Waves by the weekend. Today it is Thursday, but I finished the read-through yesterday. So I definitely hit that goal, which is fantastic. I'm currently looking at a draft with about 60,000 words. I mentioned it in the previous video, but it's basically, I cut a bunch of words, I added some stuff, I adjusted some character arc stuff, and I did a little bit of rewriting and adjusting the beginning based on an updated backstory. But that's pretty much all I've done for this draft so far. And then a big purpose actually of this first pass was to get another read through in because, like I mentioned, have not done a read through of Between the Waves since I sent it to the editor a couple months ago. And once I finished doing this read through, I was actually gonna pause for the weekend because I'm going away for a cold plunge breath work kind of wellness retreat. So I was gonna get the first pass done and then I was gonna wait until next week to continue working on it. But here we are. We're gonna continue working on it because, again, the momentum is there and I'm not willing to stop. I think it's also just because it was kind of for the past half a year to 8 months or so, this book has really been a struggle. I have not known what to do with it and I've really been struggling with it. And I think that now that things are going so well and I'm so excited about it again, I really just don't want to, I don't want to take a break with it yet. I'm still going to take a break over the weekend, but I still wanted to take some time this week to set up the scene cards, get those all figured out, and kind of just do some organization and outlining to prepare to jump into some more in-depth edits next week on draft 3. So let's talk a little bit about what that's going to look like. So 2 years ago, at the beginning of 2022, I took 6 months worth of creative writing courses from UBC through the platform edX. And I'm gonna do my scene cards based on one of those lessons. So in one of the portions of that course, we basically gave a breakdown, a generic example of what we should include on scene cards when we're going down and we're revising and editing a novel. So the idea with scene cards is to familiarize yourself with each scene and understand the purpose of it and why it's there and what it serves for the story. So you're basically doing a scene analysis for every single scene in your story. The things that they recommend you put on a scene card include a one-line description of what happens in the scene, a breakdown of each character and what they want in the scene, the emotional transition of each character in the scene, the overall positive negative shift of the scene, and whether the scene relates to a particular narrative line or subplot. So I am going to include all of those things on my scene cards, but I'll say it right now, I feel like my scene cards are much more, they're not as organized. So this is for scene 1. I put Amaya is on a guard ship collecting info for the Pirates Lunacore heist. Basically the opening scene, I don't know if it'll stay the opening scene, but right now she is kind of snooping around and doing a bit of collecting information to try and learn a little bit more about a very valuable mineral that the pirates she currently lives with, are going to try and steal. So in this scene, Amaya is the only character basically besides a guard. So she wants information because of what that information is going to provide for her and the crew. And then we talk about the kind of emotional shift throughout the scene. For this one, I feel like it was pretty neutral, but she kind of shifted from determination to hope. For the negative to positive shift, I put neutral to positive because I feel like this scene doesn't have a huge positive to negative shift or negative to positive. I'll be honest, there are going to be quite a few scene cards I think where it's going to be more of a neutral shift, I guess, which is okay. If you want to adjust it later on so that the shift is more obvious or pulls the reader in one direction versus the other, that's totally fine and I feel like that's good. I think that I just might need to start with some more neutral scenes and then I'll figure out what to do with them after. And for whether the scene relates to a particular narrative line or subplot, I didn't put anything because it's the opening scene and I feel like not all that much happens and most of what happens is just related to the main plot. So yeah, that's how I've done scene 1, and now I just have like 50 scenes or so to go. It's Friday when this vlog is supposed to be going up. Obviously it is going to be late. I got back from my retreat on Monday afternoon, and to be totally honest, it kind of feels like I've been living in a little bit of a bubble since then. I'm not really going to go into detail about how the weekend went, especially not at this point in time, just because I feel like there's so much that I still need to absorb, and there's so much that I still need to kind of process that I don't really know what I would say anyways. So instead, I'm gonna sit, enjoy my matcha, and give a little update on writing things. Ooh, there goes a scene card. Which I haven't really done much of this week at all. I've done a little bit of kind of just reviewing and seeing where I was at, but as far as getting any actual work done on draft 3, I haven't really done much. So the point where I left off earlier in this vlog was I was working on scene cards, and I started doing that before I went away for the retreat. So I ended up getting to scene 16, which is not that far in. I'm pretty sure scene 16 is only around like chapter 10. Currently there are over 30 chapters, so that's a little bit less than a third of the way through. But as I've been getting back into work this week, I just haven't really had the time to write, and that's just the reality of the situation sometimes. I'm still feeling like I'm in a good place though, because I did get through the read through so quickly, and I'm just feeling very, very good about the progress that I made at the beginning of the month. And I'm not really feeling any pressure to make a whole ton of progress right now. I feel like I need to take the time to rest and settle back into life. But I did want to update a little bit and say that I kind of changed how I was doing my scene cards, which I feel like this is very reflective and very accurate when it comes to how my process normally goes. I will start off with intentions that are usually a little bit overachieving, I guess, when it comes to my projects. And then as I get through the process, I'll realize that something that I'm doing is not entirely necessary and or overwhelming me. And I'll kind of just set it aside for that moment in time, and I'll wait to do it at a later draft. And I think that all of this is this is how you figure out your process, you know, you kind of test things out, see what works, adjust, try something different the next time, and from there, after you've written a couple books, I feel like you start to have a better idea of what your process is. I initially started out including all of the things on my scene cards. I was including a breakdown of what the scene was, so kind of just like a one-sentence overview of what was happening in the scene. I was also analyzing what each character in the scene wanted, and then I was writing down the emotional arc of that scene specifically. So if it started with, you know, the main character being very happy and excited, and then it ended with her being disappointed, for example. And then I also kept track of if the scene went from a negative note to a positive note or vice versa. And finally, I was also keeping track of if there was a specific subplot that I was keeping track of within the scene. So that's what I started off tracking, as you can see, if you can see, kind of tell from the scene 1 card. And then I dropped the other ones, but you can see scene 13 has a lot less writing on it. The reason that I ended up switching what I was doing is because I realized as I'm going through these scenes and keeping track of which ones are going to be switched around, which ones are going to be rewritten, that a lot of this flow doesn't make sense to be keeping track of at this point in time anyways if they're just going to switch around. Generally, the reason that you keep track of the emotional transitions throughout the scene and kind of like the negative to positive or positive to negative is because if you have a bunch of scenes one after another that have the same arc or the same kind of emotional transition, then it can just feel kind of repetitive and it kind of slows down the pacing a little bit, and it just feels a lot more flowy if you have variations. So if one scene goes from negative to positive and then the next scene goes from positive to negative, that's like a more natural flow anyways. So that's the purpose of keeping track of those things in the scenes. And I realized that there isn't really a need for me to be keeping track of those scenes right now, just because of how many of them are going to be restructured and rearranged. So the arc and the flow and the pacing is going to need to be fixed after I've restructured anyways. There are also quite a few scenes where they don't touch on the subplots as much as they should or at all, and I already have notes to kind of weave in the subplot a little bit better. So that's why I ended up switching to just writing down what was happening in the scene. So we're kind of, again, simplifying it and breaking it down into bite-sized pieces so that it's a little bit easier to work through and figure out what I actually need to be doing in this draft at the point that I'm in currently. So now my scenes are just saying what is happening, and I'm going to go through, finish doing that for the rest of the draft, and then I will rearrange them so that the overall plot and the overall structure is making sense. And then in a later draft, I can get down to those little details and make sure that like the flow is flowing and the pacing makes sense and the emotional arcs are making sense and all of the little subplot hints and information and foreshadowing and stuff like that is actually woven in. But I do feel like that is a later draft thing to be handling. So that has been my process for the scene cards so far, and I'm feeling good about that. That's the information that I'm going to keep for the rest of the scene cards, is just that little 1 or 2 line summary of the scene, because it's kind of the minimum amount of information that I need in order to make scene cards, and it's kind of all I can work with right now anyways. I am also going to end the vlog here because like I said, I haven't done any writing this week, so I just don't have much else to update on, but I am actually about to go and post the question post on my Patreon for my monthly kind of like sit down coffee chat update video. So if you're interested in being a part of that and seeing it when it comes out, feel free to go and support me on Patreon. It also helps me continue making consistent content over here on YouTube and giving me the extra time to do so. So I would greatly appreciate it if you decided to go and support me over there. But thank you all so much for watching this video. Don't forget to smile, and I will see you in the next one.